If you're building lists and you're using the revenue filter as a way of segmenting your data, you need to stop. And the reason you need to stop is that all revenue numbers are estimates, especially for private companies in most databases. Now, this isn't a database problem. It's not the particular provider. I'm not saying that if you're using one database, you need to move to another. You just need to understand that revenue figures and accurate revenue figures are almost impossible to find on the public web for private companies. Now, it's different if you're targeting public companies, but for private companies, you need to stop using revenue as a filter. One of the reasons you need to do this is one, because they are estimates, so they're not 100% accurate. And then also, if you are building a list and using the filter of 10 million to 50 million, as an example, but the database has that company down as 8 million, then that company, who is a good fit in terms of revenue, is just not going to show up in that list. So you're potentially missing out on a lot of accounts who do fit the criteria, but they actually are not showing up because of the data that the database has. Now, I'm going to show you a quick example, and I'm going to use Clay. The reason I'm going to use Clay is I'm pretty sure that earlier this year they did give their revenue number, and I think back then when they shared it, it was around 30 million. Obviously, it could be very different right now, but we have no way of knowing because it's a private company. So again, when you look at these, this is not about the database. I'm not saying that these databases are bad and you should change them, but it is just the reality of certain data points when it comes to list building, and something that you only really get to know once you've built thousands of lists like I have. So the first database here is Apollo. I've got the Clay account up here for Apollo. The revenue isn't showing here. I think I can change those settings, but if I go to see all fields and then scroll down, I can see that it says the revenue is 8 million, which I know is not correct. It's because I know it's at least 30, probably more. So then if we look at Clay in Ocean, I have to scroll along here, and Ocean is saying it's between 1 to 10 million, but it's actually not coming up as a different data point here as well. So this is another problem. If you build a list and you say the company has to be between 10 and 50, but the database isn't reporting on a number, they're also not going to show up in those search results as well. So it's very much like a black and white process that you go through when building a list. It either has to say this information or it doesn't. You can use OR parameters as well, or OR logic when you're building your search, but I would just generally recommend not using revenue. And now looking at ZoomInfo, ZoomInfo has 31.5 million, which I think is probably the closest that I've found in terms of being accurate to what was shared publicly by the Clay team. On GetLatka, another great database with really good data points. However, it's saying that the revenue is 37 million for 2025. However, this number was here back in February. And how can you know the 2025 revenue when we're on the second month of the year? I know that it was 37 because I use this as an example in a list building course that I built earlier this year. So this is inaccurate. This is inaccurate. This is inaccurate. This is inaccurate. And then you might think, well, I'll just Google it, see if you can find it online. So now if we look at the key revenue figures, it says 600 million according to 2024, which is not right. This isn't a great example of AI just making up an answer to give you something. Then you use ChatGPT. I didn't try any of the others. This one just cites GetLatka, so it did a good job of looking at the web, but it's still inaccurate because again, how can you report the revenue of being 37 million when that data point was there in February? And yeah, that's just the Latka again. So yeah, stop using revenue, and then you might be asking, well, what other filters can we use? Now, I like to use employee count, and then also department head count as well. So there's certain tools like ZoomInfo, Apollo, and Ocean. Those three databases all give you the option to build a list by department head count. If I'm reaching out to a company and they've got more than 20 people in their sales team, that's a great fit for me versus a company that has the revenue, but they only have one person in sales. That, again, just for my specific example. However, you have to be careful with employee numbers as well. Again, I covered this in the course I produced earlier this year. So two great examples are Airbnb and also Pavilion, which is a community for GTM leaders. So Airbnb, if you look at Airbnb, there are in most databases, again, this is not a problem with the database, it's a problem just with the data. So there are 40,000 people who on LinkedIn say that they work at Airbnb. However, Airbnb has, I think, 4,000 or 6,000 actual employees. The remaining 35,000 people are Airbnb hosts, and they have said that they work at Airbnb on LinkedIn. So that's something you need to be mindful of. Of course, certain industries won't have this problem. So if you're very specific in terms of the list that you're building, you're segmenting by industry, where you're not going to have these fringe cases come up that often, then you don't really have to worry about this. Your employee size should be a pretty good range and filter to build a list with. But you have to remember that no list is ever going to be 100% perfect. There's always going to be outliers and fringe cases like this. And honestly, I don't think you can blame the databases. It's just that data is public or is analyzed and segmented from public sources. And the reality is the majority of databases build their data from LinkedIn as well. And people can update their LinkedIn. You can change things on your LinkedIn. You can change your job title to anything you want on LinkedIn. So yeah, just be mindful that how these databases are built are often based off scraping LinkedIn and also public data or data found on the web as well. So whenever a human can change something, there can always be a mistake. So Airbnb is one great example. Let's go one closer to home. We got Pavilion. Pavilion now says 11 to 50 employees. And like I said, it's a community for GTM leaders. It's a great community, not knocking them at all. So if I look at this, 11 to 50, but we've actually got over 100 page results. I'm not using sales now, so I don't have the full answer, but let's go to first connections, because I'm pretty sure I'm connected with quite a few. And as you can see, I am connected with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 per page, and there's 8 here. So already that's over 80 people. And I can see it's up to 42. So there's 420 people here. Looking at a different database in Apollo, for example, I can see that they have 6,000 employees. But that's not true. It's just that people have said that they are a member of Pavilion. So any trade association, any community, I guess community is a kind of catch-all term. Be mindful of that, because if you are trying to reach out to a company and you only target companies with over 5,000 employees, Pavilion is going to show up in that list. So just make sure that you're using multiple filters when you build your list to avoid these sort of mistakes as well. So even with better filters or additional filters, you're never going to have a 100% perfectly accurate list. Just accept that. It took me a while. I thought I was just being lazy or avoiding the hard challenges, but it's just the reality. So that is the number one thing to remember, is you won't have a perfect list every time. And also stop using revenue as a filter when you're building your lists. Okay, that's my public service announcement over. Ciao.